Hey everyone, welcome back to The Right Response with Rosh, and today's video is a continuation on our theme around feedback, but this time it's about how can we get better at receiving feedback. I've got one really important tool that I'm going to share with you to help you get from hating feedback to loving feedback. But before I do that, I'm going to share with you 5 things to keep in mind so that we can become better at receiving feedback. So let's get to it. So let me ask you this question. Have you ever tried to give feedback to someone? Maybe it's because they were using a tone of voice on you that you were not comfortable with. Maybe it's because in meetings you had noticed them interrupting others or maybe speaking over others. Other times, perhaps it's feedback on a project or the fact that they are making some errors with their entries into an Excel spreadsheet, right? So, enjoy it much? Chances are that whenever we have an opportunity to give feedback, or when we think we should, or we must, or we are compelled to give feedback, chances are that we avoid it. Why? Because we don't feel safe. We are worried that people are going to react. And sometimes that reaction could mean people getting really upset, people really, blowing their top off. And sometimes the reaction could be that they break down in tears. So it is about people when we're having to give feedback, and therefore it comes with feelings and emotions. And sometimes that can get messy. Here's the thing. If we are not giving feedback because we don't feel safe giving feedback, because we don't feel comfortable, because we know it's not going to be welcome, then isn't that hurting relationships and performances even more? So aren't we, wasting this opportunity of becoming better versions of ourselves if we ourselves are not creating a safe space for people to share feedback? So as they say, feedback is a gift. And what a waste if we are not going to be gifted information because people are super scared or nervous about giving us feedback. So before I share with you a tool that I absolutely love of taking us from hating feedback to loving feedback, well, at least most of the time, let me share with you 5 things that we perhaps need to consider or keep in mind when we are receiving feedback. So the first thing is assume positive intention. Now, this is something I learned in NLP, that underlying every behavior is a positive intention. Now, of course, sometimes when we are about to get feedback, we know we ahead of time, so we can kind of mentally and emotionally prepare for it. But there are times when you may get feedback totally unexpectedly, and it may come from a source that perhaps you're not very comfortable with. And the thing about it is that even if it is really uncomfortable, if we can have this mantra that underlying every behavior is a positive intention, underlying every behavior is a positive intention, then chances are we will be calmer and we will have a clearer head to really listen to what the person is saying. Second thing, listen. And when I say listen, I mean listen without interrupting. And what I mean by that is sometimes we want to defend ourselves or we want to give justifications or explanations as to why we did something, based on the feedback we are receiving. I remember some years ago when I was doing a train the trainer, and as part of that, I had to do a module, and basically the intention is for the other trainers to give us feedback. Now, the thing about us trainers, we can stand in front of other people, speaking in front of hundreds or thousands of people. But when it comes to speaking in front of other trainers, we kind of get nervous and we get all very self-conscious because they're our peers, right? And I remember a few years back when, I was having to go through this and I was getting the feedback and I went into a defensive mode and I, started, giving explanations. And then the master trainer kind of put up a finger and she went, "Rosh, just want to remind you that when it comes to feedback, all you need to do is listen." Okay, so sometimes it's tough, but it is about listening without interrupting. Of course, you can ask questions. You can ask questions, but in the spirit of curiosity and in the spirit of wanting to learn more. Can you help me understand what exactly this feedback is? And I find it's also useful as someone receiving feedback to ask for examples, not in the context of like being defensive and saying, can you give me some examples of, what do you mean by that? But, but genuinely to know exactly what was said, how it was said, or what was it that we did that, didn't go so well with the other person or with the team. Third thing is to go into the space of gratitude. So it is about saying the thank you. The person who has come to us probably nervous, probably afraid, probably worried about whether whatever feedback they're going to give us is going to affect the professional or personal relationship, right? So it does take courage. And you and I know this. That's why, we are very careful about how and when we give feedback and to whom we give feedback, right? If we don't have to do it, if we are not a manager of a team and we don't have to do it, maybe we too will shy away. So if someone is coming to us with something that can only help us be better, and all of us are learners, we want to be better, then let's be grateful for them taking the time, the effort, and having the guts to share what they need to share with us. So the fourth thing is to reflect. Now, the reason why I say reflect, because sometimes feedback that comes to us may not really be appropriate or accurate. Maybe the person doesn't quite have the big picture. Chances are they may not know you, understand your own motivations or perhaps your own objectives. So they may not have a very accurate piece of data for you. So you do need to reflect on it. And at the same time, we don't want to shut down or shut out feedback that comes from people that we don't necessarily like or have any respect for, because sometimes they have valuable feedback. So the more important part is to reflect and to really understand, okay, is there something here? Is this part of a pattern? Have I heard this before? And do I need to check with others as to whether this piece of feedback has validity? So reflection is such an important part of, being a good receiver of feedback. And, I remember watching a video once of a leadership guru who talked about the fact that it is in reflection you shift direction. So if we want to shift direction, really giving some reflection time to the feedback that you receive would be a great idea. The fifth thing is to then act. Go into action. Apply some of the feedback that you have received. Go ahead and make sure that, you let people know that, hey, you know what? This feedback was super valuable. At the time, I know, I didn't receive it as well as I could, if that happened. But chances are that after this video, you are going to be so gracious when you receive that feedback. You don't need to apologize, but go back to the people, let them know what worked, and have a conversation about it. And this is really a great a great habit to have, because sometimes when you are changing and you are making the effort to change, if people don't know it or if you don't speak about it, sometimes it goes unnoticed. So it is really important to share with people, either when you've affected some change or when you're planning to change. Okay, which brings me to that wonderful tool I wanted to share with you on how you can get from hating feedback to loving feedback. So this comes from the world, or from the writings of Marshall Goldsmith. And many years ago, when I was working for another organization, they created this wonderful activity called FEEDFORWARD, which is inspired by Marshall Goldsmith's writings. And it's called FEEDFORWARD, and it's something that you can use where you take the feedback that you've received and you move it into the future. Instead of always being in the past, right? Because feedback comments on things that have happened. It's in the past. But imagine if you could use it to create improvements in the future, which we don't often do. So I love this tool because it puts control into my own hands. So the first time I experienced it was when my boss came to us and said, "Hey, I want to improve my I can't remember what it was, but I think it was some listening skills or something like that." And he asked us for suggestions on how he could improve. And it felt really good for my boss to come to me asking me for suggestions. And it was something that was practiced in the organization. So I want to share with you how you can use it, and I used it really effectively. So first, the techniques on how you can use Feed Forward. So the first is to get really super clear about what is it that you want to change. So if you have had some feedback about your email writing, which is what I got, right? So it was from my boss, it was from one of my directors, and apparently my email writing left a lot to be desired because I never put things into context and I wasn't very organized with the way I wrote my emails. And I never could understand it because other people got my emails, but this person didn't. So I used that feedback to then do feed forward. So I was very, very clear about what was the area I wanted to shift or change. And then I found 6 people and I wrote them a short and brief email saying very clearly what was it I wanted to work on, and then asking them if they had 2 suggestions for me to change or improve. Now, I was very careful to choose people whom I respected as good email writers, and I also wrote to the person that had given me the feedback. Now, the wonderful thing about Feed Forward is that all you need to do is to say thank you, and that's it. The onus is on you as to whether you want to use, any of these suggestions that you get. Now, choosing 6 people meant I got 12 suggestions, and here's what happened. I actually put it into action. So I applied some of the things that I learned, and the gift that I got at the end of this exercise was that the director, the person that gave me the original feedback, actually commented and commended me on better email writing, right? So I got to improve. I got to change. And now I'm a much better email writer, all because not only did I get that feedback, but I was able to use Feed Forward as a way to really create a huge difference in the way I communicate. So that's what I mean about going from, hating feedback to loving feedback. I was not one of those people who was very natural at receiving feedback. I used to get really upset. I used to feel, it was a criticism, a comment on me. And I remember, thinking when people would give me feedback, I would think that, oh, what do they know? Who are they to tell me, what I need to change and what I need to do differently? Or they don't get it, they just don't get it. That's so, and I would just blow it off. So if we can find a way to become better at receiving feedback, and if we can find a way to accepting it, reflecting on it, making real changes in whatever it is, whether it's our personal lives or whether it's our professional lives, what a huge difference, what a huge gift, right? So that's my video for today, which is all about how do we get from hate to loving feedback. I hope that you've really enjoyed this video, and I do hope that you will like and subscribe and share my videos to people whom you think would need it. Share it with managers, share it with team leaders, share it with your colleagues, and please do give me feedback because I am very good at receiving feedback. So do share it with me in comments, and do remember to hit the notification bell because my next one is going to be about how do we do better at giving feedback. Till the next time.